One of the most hotly contested Senate races in the country has just been upended by a divorce. A statement from the wife of Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says she made the decision on, quote, biblical grounds, listing adultery in her divorce petition. It's also upping the pressure on President Trump, whose as yet unannounced endorsement will be pivotal in this race. He is close to Paxton, a MAGA star, but is on a plane right now with incumbent Senator John Cornyn. The race that has divided Republicans has Democrats chomping at the bit to flip a seat in that red state. Joining us now, Jim Messina, former campaign manager for President Obama's 2012 reelection and CEO of the Messina Group. Reed Galen is independent political strategist and co-founder of the Lincoln Project. So, Reed, Paxton has been polling ahead of Senator Cornyn, but do you think this divorce announcement could turn this into a more competitive race?
Well, that would only be if MAGA suddenly came back to some semblance of reality, which it suddenly has not. And remember that this primary isn't until March of next year. But I would say that, I saw some of the articles about this race and what it means for a Democratic matchup. I was talking to a friend of mine in Republican circles who's seen private polling. I can see why even Donald Trump is having second thoughts about Paxton. He's dead even with a generic Democrat in some of the things I've heard. And so what I would say is that even though John Cornyn has done nothing of any note in the 86 or so years he's been in the United States Senate, I think they'd rather have a reliable Republican vote than a very toxic guy who's been under federal indictment, who has fired all his staff, has been impeached, and only his wife, I think, actually saved him from said impeachment. So I think this is one where Trump would rather have a win than have a loyalist.
Yeah, she stood by him through that. But, Jim, Trump's MAGA base has, frankly, been a little bit unhappy with him lately. Do you think that would push Trump to go for Paxton, maybe also because Trump was Teflon when his own personal history was questioned? Or do you think that somebody's going to get in his ear and say, listen, here's the polls, just as we heard from Reed, he's weak against a Democrat, you got to let him go?
Yeah, Chris, Democrats love nothing more than a Republican food fight, and that's exactly what we're getting in Texas. And when you look at it, Ken Paxton is just the worst nightmare for the Republicans to nominate. But to Reed's point, very smart point, he's up 19 points in the primary over Cornyn, who's clearly the better general election candidate, because MAGA doesn't care about that stuff. They want people who give them red meat and tell them the things they want to hear. President Trump is in a difficult position. He probably would like to have Cornyn, but he's saying to Cornyn, look, prove to me you can win. And so I'm sure that's why this story came out when it did, because people are attempting to put some blows on Paxton, and his wife just decided to help. And this is a very big deal in a general election. It's no longer a private matter between two people. It's now a public referendum on his marriage and on who he is as a person.
Yeah, that's sort of the question I have, Reed. In a statement, Paxton seemed to deflect blame away from himself and onto the media and his political enemies, which raises a kind of fascinating set of questions. Whether Trump beating what was once a political character test can transfer to Paxton. In other words, things that would have taken down previous candidates that are personal scandals or personal accusations didn't hurt Donald Trump. Is that where we are as a country as a whole, where this type of scandal doesn't matter, even in a Texas with a candidate who is run on being a strong Christian, or is that uniquely Donald Trump?
I think it's more uniquely Donald Trump than it is anything else. He is the leader of the movement. The movement is his. If they decided to endorse a Cornyn, would it help? It probably would. Trump's endorsement. Remember, J.D. Vance would not be vice president of the United States today if Trump had not endorsed him back when he was running for the United States Senate, which led to a 1-point primary victory against his opponent. So Trump does have the ability to move the electorate. On the other hand, though, Chris, think about this, is that if they had chosen a normal candidate in the U.S. Senate race in Georgia a couple of years ago instead of Herschel Walker, there's a pretty good chance that that person and not Reverend Warnock would be sitting in the United States Senate right now. So they want to go back and look at this and say, do we want this? Now, the problem is that, again, Cornyn is a bowl of vanilla ice cream, right? He's doing nothing for the base. The MAGA folks will turn out in March. It's going to be a low turnout election. And so now the National Republican Senatorial Committee is going to have to decide how much they're willing to put in to save their own guy.
So you know what it's like to run a campaign, Jim. Let's pretend that you were running Cornyn's campaign, which is a bit of a stretch, but let's just say that. If you see what's unfolding right now, do you sit back and just let it play out, or do you seize on it in some way?
I think they got to do something to change the trajectory of this race. When you're down 19 points in a low turnout Republican primary, it's time to start moving and time to start trying to make two arguments. The first thing I would do is say he's a better general election candidate, which is exactly what they're doing. And two, to Reed's point, I'd go find something to excite the base. I'd go start talking to people and saying, this is what I'm for. You know, being a vanilla bowl of ice cream has proven to be a very bad recipe in Republican primaries since the Donald Trump era began.
But Jim, do you do an ad, say, on what just happened? I mean, I can come up with a lot of different phrases that you might want to use against a Ken Paxton, given what his wife has said. But do you just let it play out and go in the other direction, as you're saying? High road, I guess.
Yeah, look, I think you wait to see the impact here. You know, right now, don't throw a drowning man a life preserver. So don't try to make this political right now. He's already got his own problems. When you're fighting with your wife on Twitter about their divorce, stay out of that. But, you know, going forward, as we get closer to the March primary, Cornyn's got to do what Cornyn's got to do. And eventually his argument is going to be this guy can't win. And look at all of his baggage.